Welcome to the Content Coaching Corner. And here we have no problem being salesy as long as we keep it classy. Not to mention, we care about profit over popularity. Can I get an amen on that? And we're very intentional about our content. So every single month, we bring you new content that's going to help you grow your business as a direct seller. It's going to help you stand out in the industry, but most importantly, it's going to help you with your confidence so that the content you're creating is leading to conversation and conversion. So let's dive in today. Let's actually talk about a strategy we use as direct sellers known as the staple story. Today, what we are going to focus on are three very specific types of staple stories. The three types of staple stories are a business staple story, a product staple story, and every once in a while, a pivot staple story. Now, you might be saying, I have no idea what a staple story is. What are you actually talking about? And I'm going to break it down for you. Usually when we come into direct sales or we start using a product of some sort, we have a type of before. The initial where we were before we invested, before we signed up, and it usually is a pain point of some sort. We then also have an aha moment or a turning point when we realize this is the bee's knees, or this is something that I have to share more about, or this has impacted my life and I need to get the word out. And then finally, we have an after. Now, it doesn't have to be a physical after, but an after is a resolution of some sort for why you actually started in the first place. Maybe you found some peace, or maybe there is some type of physical transformation that took place when you started using the product. But the purpose of a staple story is to help your audience actually understand the experience that you had. And they then will begin to see themselves in the story that you are creating, and they're going to feel connected to you. It's probably important here to note that when you are creating a staple story, you're going to want to talk about you're going to want to talk about me, you're going to want to talk about and you're going to think that the focus of the story is on you. I mean, after all, it is your story, but your intention is so far from shining the light on yourself. Your intention is really about having somebody else look at your story and say, that story gives me hope. That story is one that I want to be a part of. That story is one that I could see myself in. That story is where my own story is going to begin. It's a connector for other people. Well, there's a couple of things that we want to mention when it comes to actually creating the staple story and making sure that it's intended to be perceived by your audience in a way that calls them to action. That's the key. It isn't just a story to toot your own horn or just share exactly all of your wins or your successes. It's about bringing people in and being inclusive. So how do we write a winning staple story? And what does it actually look like? Well, the first thing that I want to mention is in my book, Direct Sales Done Right, if you turn it to chapter 7, there is an entire chapter that is devoted to writing the staple story. And in the story, I talk about my own experience with starting in direct sales. And I talk about the little details about what I was watching and how annoyed I was with this girl on social media who kept talking about her workouts. But in turn, I ended up wanting a piece of what she had. And I share how my staple story looked when I started in direct sales. So you can refer to chapter 7 at any point for an example. The other thing that you want to maybe look at as a member of the collective is Module 3, Lesson 1 in the Direct Sales Done Right Academy. Now, that course is located in your Kajabi portal, and you'll be able to learn more about your staple story. Okay. So what are you going to notice about all of the staple stories that I'm going to share with you today? You're probably going to notice that there are descriptive words, adjectives within the text that really draws people in. It can make them almost picture as if they are in the scene. They can see themselves in the story, which is exactly what we want. The second thing you're going to notice is inclusive language. Do you remember me talking about that? I, me, my language. And if you aren't sure what I'm talking about, if you go to episode 262 of the Direct Sales Done Right podcast, there's a little bit more on that as well. But we want to use inclusive language so while they're reading, they feel as though she's talking right to me, because you actually are talking right to your audience. Your staple story elicits some type of emotion. It makes them feel the feels. It makes them feel as though they're seen and heard. It's like you're talking directly to your ideal client or your ideal team member. The staple story also has a clear call to action. Now, I'm a stickler. Many times we want to put our call to action at the end of the post. I'm going to encourage you to play around with putting it at the top of the post. Maybe not the very top, but maybe in the second or the third sentence, and possibly in a reel that you are creating as well. So now you're probably wondering what it looks like. What is an example of a staple story? How does this actually work? Well, first thing I want to mention is if you are in direct sales, you have a staple story. You probably have a business staple story, and you probably have a product staple story. If you don't remember me mentioning this, you have to have belief in yourself, belief in the product, and belief in the opportunity if you are going to be a direct sales ninja in the market. So that means we have to have a staple story that really encompasses one of those things or potentially both of those things. You might also find yourself pivoting in your direct sales business. Now, I've seen this from time to time where people decide that this isn't the best option for me in terms of company and I need to make a change. And we can be incredibly classy about it and still call to just the light of why we made an adjustment or a switch and what were the blessings that came through that switch, or even the lessons that you learned that really have in turn made an impact on where you are now. All right, so let's actually dive in. The first woman that I want to introduce you to is our collective member, Lacey Hanson. Now, Lacey is a Beachbody body partner, and she is in direct sales. She actually has 7 years of experience. And I had the opportunity to interview Lacey and hear a little bit more about her staple story. Now, if you are a Chic Branding Experience client, this is a big part of the interview process. When I work with all of my clients, I really dive into what is the staple story, because I know that that is a foundational piece of content that can be used over and over again. I know I didn't really emphasize that, so I want to do it here. Your staple story can be told consistently with detailed changes, but for the most part, the before, the aha, and the after are pretty obvious. And what do we know about marketing? Sometimes people need that repetition. So never be afraid to tell your staple story over and over. And although I digress for just a minute, you might recall that Melanie's staple story has a lot to do with having an unsupportive spouse. And my staple story is all about getting those groceries paid for. And I repeated it over and over. Why? Because my content isn't about me. My content is about the person on the other side of the screen. So back to Lacey and what we were saying. Lacey and I had a conversation about her staple story, and we really broke it down into 3 parts. What you're going to notice through this interview, and I want you to be on the lookout for, is what was her before? What were those pain points? What were those struggles? What was Lacey really desiring? Then ultimately, what was her turning point? What was her aha moment where she said, I've got to do something about this, drew a line in the sand, and made a change? And then ultimately, I want you to look for and listen to what Lacey says are the blessings of making that decision. Let's dive in to the interview I had with Lacey about her business staple story. Well, hey everyone, I am here with collective member Lacey Hanson, and today we are going to walk through a staple story. What I want you to do is pay attention to where Lacey described she was before she started as a body partner, her aha moment or her turning point, and then she's going to describe where she was now. Now, in a Chic Branding Experience, this is something that I do one-on-one with the clients. But for today's sake, we are going to work through it together, and then we're going to pull out those descriptive words so that we can create a staple story alongside Lacey. All right. Hi, Lacey. Thank you so much for being on this training with me. I'm so excited to have you.
I'm so excited to be here. Thank you.
We're going to have so much fun today. I would love for you to take a minute and describe to everybody on this training, where were you? Describe where you were before you actually signed up as a body partner.
So before I signed up, I actually was in this room and I have a mirror right over here. And I remember looking in the mirror and just being so unhappy in my skin. I was just at that point, this was before kids, where I just needed a change. I was sluggish. I was falling like asleep at work at my desk if no one was watching and no one was around. And I just needed a boost of confidence. And I remember my friend from church had shared something about these home workouts.
Mhm.
And I had been a gym goer at the time, but obviously it wasn't quite working for me. I wouldn't show up. It was just so easy to not go to the gym. And so I thought, you know what, let me just give this a try. I reached out to her and I joined her accountability group. I tried these home workouts and I got really great results. And I just remember feeling like the light in my eyes had lit up.
Mm,
And from a former athlete in high school to not being an athlete, you kind of lose a little bit of
yeah.
yourself. and and so when I started gaining that muscle back and that endurance, feeling I could run up a mountain, just that energy, it was like I was so excited that when I saw her starting to post about the business, I was like, I could make this a business. Like, I love this. I would love to be able to help other women feel this good too. And at the time, I was working full time, but I thought this would be a really fun hobby for me. I really love this idea. So I was one of those unicorn people who reached out to my upline and was like, sign me up. I want to do this.
Yeah.
And so, like I said, it was more of a hobby. I didn't really have a strong vision for my future. I didn't have a why. So I had some success because I just really loved it.
Yeah.
And I hit the first leadership rank within 4 months. I attended the first summit in New Orleans. I loved it. But like I said, I didn't have a strong vision. So come September, when I got pregnant with my son, I kind of like, instead of working the business, I'd be on Pinterest looking up all the things about being a new mom. So I really took a big step back. I never fully like got out of the game. I was still there. I was still running challenge groups, but again, it was more of a hobby. I wasn't a serious business builder. I was not consistent. And and then did you want me to go to my aha moment? I can kind
Before
of
we
transition.
actually do, I'd like to take a step back and I would love for you to share a little bit more about, you had said you were a former athlete and what in your life like took you away from that, because this was before children. So what was it that like kind of got you into that not athletic, not moving as much and just losing a little bit of yourself?
Well, I was an athlete in high school, and so it was volleyball, basketball, and I mean that was my passion.
Yeah.
And I remember thinking my senior year in our very last game, I remember thinking to myself, I'm never going to be this fit ever again. I'm never going to have this much lung endurance, lung capacity. I better enjoy it while I can. Because
Okay.
like just working out, like I'd never worked out in high school. I'd never like it never been a part of my life. And
Yeah.
so it just stopped because I stopped being in sports. And
Yeah.
so I don't know, I never thought working out could be that thing that kind of brought that back up in me.
I love that you mentioned that too, because I think that that is something that a lot of women think is once you kind of leave your athletic life, or once you kind of like get to another point in your life where it's not so much a center of your life, it's almost like it just stops, and that's like totally normal. So I love that you touched on that. I also love that you kind of threw a plot twist in there where you did sign up as a distributor, as a partner within Body, but it really wasn't your aha moment. You had kind of seen somebody posting about it. Actually, was there a certain post or anything that she created that made you go, huh, that's interesting? Do you recall any of it?
Actually, another thumbs.
I
Now it's
don't
coming
know.
out.
I don't know.
No, I remember seeing her post about it, but actually what made me have that like idea was my husband was like, "Hey, you should sign up as um a coach so we can get the discount on that shake." That
Okay.
actually made me even think, wait a minute, not only could we get a discount, but I've seen her posting about it. I can make a business out of it too. So my husband actually was the one who kind of pushed me into it a little bit.
Got it. Got it. Okay. So let's dive into the when you realized you wanted to create more of a business from it.
Okay. So in let's see, May of 2018, I had my son, and it was an absolute wreck. Like, hospital birth did not go as I was supposed to have a home birth, ended up at the hospital with a C-section. My husband or my son had contracted group B strep from me, which is very rare and very deadly if they get it. It's like a less than 1% chance, but he got it. So he was in the hospital for 8 days. I was dealing with some major baby blues in the hospital. Like, I just remember it was Mother's Day in the hospital, and family came around, and we were all celebrating, and I just had a smile on my face. I went to the bathroom and I just stood in front of the mirror and I just cried. I didn't know why I was sad. And then, along with breastfeeding problems, anxiety, just all these things in this postpartum phase. And then once we got breastfeeding down at about the 4-month mark, which is the same age as my second son now, my son had his very first breath holding spell. And if you don't know what that is, like, imagine you're changing your baby's diaper, he's crying as he normally does, and he starts to turn blue. And you're like, okay, why aren't you taking a breath? And then he dies. And he doesn't really die. He passes out, but you think he died. Like, you're so confused. You're giving him mouth to mouth. You're like, your heart's pounding. You're just like in shock. And then 10 seconds later, he takes in a breath. That is a breath holding spell. 1 in 20 kids have them. My son since then has had about 500 of those since then. And now that he's almost 6, he's pretty much grown out of them. But all that to say, like, I was just going through a lot, and I had so much anxiety, doctor's visits, all these things.
Mm.
And it wasn't until that moment where I felt like I was kind of at that rock bottom. And I was taking my son to work with me full time. That was very nice that I could do that. But he was about 5 months old. And my boss came to me and he said, "Lacey, it's time for you to find childcare. He can't come to work with you forever. He's starting to be more of a distraction." And I knew it was coming, but my heart just sank. And it was that day that I drew my line in the sand. And I said, I have this thing that has been a hobby for me. I haven't fully taken it seriously. I've seen friends of mine replace their income with this. If they can do it, why can't I?
Mm.
And so it was in that moment, that was my aha moment. And because of that aha moment, and I had that why now, I had that vision of being home with my son. And instead of him being stuck at a babysitter's, and instead of him having a breath holding spell in the arms and waking up of someone else, he'd be in my arms, waking up with me, and I'm the one who is comforting him. And so because of that, that strong vision really propelled me to actually take the action necessary with, early mornings, pockets of my day, lunch breaks. Like, there was no plan B anymore. That's the problem, is in the beginning, there was the plan B. And now it was, nope, there is no plan B. I'm not going to work here forever. And like, I was so focused on my vision that like I had tunnel vision, like nothing was going to stop me.
Wow. And what year was that? So when was that?
That was end of 2018.
Okay. And how long had you been signed up as a kind of hobby distributor at that point?
About a year and a half. So even though I've been a partner with the company for 7 years, I always say that I've really been building a business truly for about 5.5.
Your 5.5 years. So when was we know your turning point, and we're going to actually work through how to take all of those details and make them inclusive to the followers that you have. But what is your biggest just where you are now because of it? Like, how has your life changed? How has it been blessed? Who are you now because of that opportunity?
Oh my gosh, it's changed my life so drastically. So in June, it'll be 3 years since I quit that job.
Mhm.
And to be able to be home with my second son, and he should be at a babysitter's right now full time while I'm off to that desk job, but instead I'm working it in the mornings and during nap time, and I get to be there for him. And even though for those first 2.5 years of my oldest son's life I was building this and working elsewhere, he doesn't remember those first 2.5 years, but he does remember the second 2.5 years before he went off to kindergarten that
Okay.
I was there. So he remembers me working from home. And I love that. I love that he won't remember me going through the grind and being sleep deprived and just making those short-term sacrifices. He's remembering me having more time with him at home.
Mm.
And our my income has grown so much. This year I will double what I used to make at that full-time job. So
Wow.
that is a huge, huge blessing.
Yeah. Is your husband supportive of the business?
You know what? He was not at first for a
Okay.
long time. For a
Yeah.
long time. And I think partially it was my fault because I was the type of person who'd be on my phone 24/7. And
Yeah.
and now I'm very, very, very intentional about when he's off work on Mondays and Tuesdays. Like, I work my business in the mornings, but when I'm around my husband, I try my hardest to not even look at my phone, even for pleasure. I need to be present for him. And then Wednesdays through Fridays, like when he is at work, like I am in hustle mode.
Yeah.
So, but really for him, it was seeing the income and seeing me like proving to him that yes, this is not just a little side business, a little hobby, that term. Um, Basically proving to him that this is a real job. Because it
Yeah.
is unconventional to
Yeah.
some people who have no idea like what we're doing. So
Yeah.
so he is supportive now.
Yeah. Awesome. Awesome. Well, everyone, I'm so excited to dive into Lacey Staples' story, and we're going to break it down. We're going to look at where she was before. We're going to look at her turning point and ultimately how we can connect where she is now with who her ideal client and team member is going to be. So, Lacey, thank you so much for your time. I look forward to diving into your Staples story.
It gives me all of the feels whenever I think about how her life has been impacted because of that decision. Now, I realize you might be saying to yourself, well, I don't know if her ideal client is necessarily having the same exact struggle that she is. They probably aren't. However, struggle is often universal. And when we actually can see ourselves in a story of a universal struggle, we can pull through those details that captivated us, that kept our interest, and then ask ourselves, where do I come into the story? That's what our audience is thinking to themselves. So let's actually look at some of those brainstormed ideas. Once I am done interviewing Lacey, and I encourage you to write all of this out, we captured some details. There's a lot of detail here. You're probably going to notice that we didn't use it all. In fact, we maybe kept a couple of the details in each area, but we now have different bullet points to play around with. So once I do a staple story post, I might go to myself, if it doesn't do well, maybe I need to play around with some of the details. What details do I want to add? What details do I want to delete? And go from there. So here is an example of what Lacey's written business staple story is going to look like. You're going to notice there is going to be a hook. There is going to be a call to action. You're also going to notice inclusive language, descriptions, and you're going to notice that there are 3 points that we make in the staple story. The before, the aha moment, and the where she is now, and a crystal clear call to action. I loved hearing Lacey's staple story, but more importantly, I love that she's going to be able to use these descriptions and be able to build hers out. Now, Lacey's was great. I love a good staple story, and I hope right now you're thinking about your own business staple story. It isn't about the glamour and how far you've gotten in your business, but that you are relating to your audience with something that has impacted your life in a positive way that they themselves are looking for as well. Let's dive into a product staple story. Man, I had so much fun meeting with Stephanie Daniel. Her story is so much fun because she was so far from this makeup guru when she actually started. And I love the details she shared within the Staples story that really helped me go, you are so relatable. And I guarantee there are so many women who are just like you thinking the same thing. We've got to pull out those details. Let's go ahead and dive in.
Well, hey everyone, it is Katie here with Stephanie Daniel, who is going to walk us through a product staple story. So I'm going to start asking her all of the questions. And then when we're done, I'm going to show you how to break down a product staple story so that you too can implement this in your own business. Okay, Stephanie, so tell me a little bit about where you were before you started using the products that you now sell.
So, I sell makeup. So before I found my product, I was literally getting comments from strangers about if I was sick because my skin looked so pale. Before basically I turned 40, I just used makeup to cover up. I have rosacea, so I would just use whatever was handy to cover it up. And then all of a sudden that wasn't working very well. I work outside a lot. I'm a wildlife biologist, so I have to have something that can stand up to the elements, and especially in our hot, humid summers. So anything I was using was literally melting off my face during the day.
Yeah.
It was bad. And
So
then I would get these comments from, basically old farmer guys. And I'm like, well, if they feel like they need to say something out loud, then I need to make a change.
Okay, so a couple questions for you. Before you started using the products, and I know that you mentioned you were really outdoorsy, even your job, you work with a lot of males. Like, did you have experience with different makeups? Like, were you somebody who was like into makeup at all?
Never. I used it as a means to an end to cover my rosacea. And a lot of times it would be something with maybe an SPF just so I wouldn't sunburn, like a 2-for-1 special. I had nothing else that I was using it for besides just covering.
And were you somebody who like understood different brands, or were you just like go to the drugstore and kind of get whatever?
Basically, I would use whatever maybe my best friend was using, or and even whatever color they used. Like I had no idea about anything. If I was to walk into a makeup store, I probably would have heart palpitations because I would just be overwhelmed with everything.
Yeah. So where did you first find out about the products that you're now sharing and selling?
Well, I just I knew I had to do something different, and so of course, the internet, we Google everything, or YouTube, or anything. Really, I went to YouTube and I just started, trying to find anything. And I went through several different products. And the one that I had been using that I thought, man, this covered well. It was like a spray foundation type thing, and it did provide great coverage, but it didn't have my color. So I was either orange or pale to where people thought I was literally sick. And I thought, man, this isn't going to work. So I've heard about the product online, and I thought, well, I'll try it.
Yeah.
And so I went completely rogue, did not go through, a person that sells it or anything. I thought, I'm not messing with anyone. I'm just going to try it, see if I like it. And actually, I hated it at first, honestly.
No way. Okay. Yeah. What did you hate about it?
Well, because I didn't go through someone that could teach me how to use it. I was using too much, and I didn't know how, because I've never, I just would put the makeup on, and just cover whatever. But
Okay.
I didn't know how to apply it correctly. And so I was using too much. So it didn't feel right. And I didn't like it at first. I thought, well, no, this is just another one of those that's not going to work. But once I finally applied it correctly, it honestly, and I know it sounds crazy, but it was life-changing. I mean, on so many levels, really.
Yeah. Well, I want to walk through like how it was life-changing, but even going back to how you learned how to apply it. How did you learn how to apply it?
So I'm very research based as a scientist, and I watched all the videos. Like I dug back into YouTube, the internet, everything. Finally found like a mentor for the product itself. And what I should have done in the first place, I've never really done anything the right way. So I just that way and figured out how to use it. And once I used it correctly and the right amount of product,
Yeah.
and I'm selling it now. So
Yeah. Yeah. And that's saying a lot too, as somebody who didn't come from a makeup background and never really used a lot of makeup or had an understanding of makeup. That's pretty big. So a couple other questions for you. You said that you ended up researching a lot and like figuring out how to use it. One of the most common mistakes people make when they get your specific product is that they use too much. Is that what you said?
correct. Yeah.
Yeah. And did it take a long time for you to figure out how to use it better, or was it pretty easy once you learned or did your research?
Well, I kept trying to apply it the way I've always applied makeup in the past, and it's just a different way to apply it because it's not all one color. And so you just apply it differently. And once I figured that out and I got that routine down, I mean, I can do my makeup in like 2.5 minutes and be done out the door and never worry about it the rest of the day. So yeah, it took about 2-ish weeks, 2.5 weeks after I finally, went through the right steps of learning how to do it.
Okay.
And yeah, it was good.
Yeah. And do you feel as somebody who sells it now, do you help cut down that learning curve for women who don't necessarily have a makeup background or who don't really experience makeup?
I really try to. I have video, like an introduction video going through everything that I send out as soon as, I get their shipping notice. And then I'm always offering either if they're local to me an in-person or a Zoom or something like that to walk them through because, 2 weeks doesn't sound like a long time, but if you've been struggling for a long time, then 2 additional weeks just feels like you're just that much more defeated.
For sure. All right. So tell me about how your life has been impacted because of the product.
Well, and it's crazy because those same, you don't think of these like farmer guys, their makeup is not, but they're not on that level, but they'd be like, something's different about you. Have you been in the sun lately? Or, people noticed the difference. And it just made my confidence because I was, I work outside and I was always worried about, is my makeup running off my face? Do I have patches or is it, am I super red? Because the redness was always kind of a pain point for me. And now I don't give it a second thought. It's one less thing to worry about throughout the day. I know once I put it on, it's going to stay on and I'm good to go.
I love it. I love it. Well, as you guys can see, Stephanie was able to walk us through where she was before when it came to the product, her aha moment when she realized she needed to make a change, and then ultimately where she is now because of it. This staple story, we're going to write it out now, taking all of those details, and we're going to figure out how to sell it in a way or share it in a way that it brings people in. It makes people want to think more about how can this product impact me. So it's all about being inclusive with the staple story. All right, you guys, let's break it down.
Just like we did with Lacey, let's actually break down the before, the aha, and the who she is becoming. Now, in some cases, it's not always as obvious, but in Stephanie's case, she had a clear before, and some of that was rooted in a lot of frustration. Very, very relatable. She had a turning point that wasn't necessarily crystal clear because it wasn't perfect. It wasn't an aha moment that said, as soon as I bought this product, I knew it was for me. In fact, it was kind of riddled with these twists and turns and doing a little bit more research and realizing the importance of having a guide to help her use the products. So key, especially as she begins to position herself as an industry leader. Then you're going to notice we did what we did with Lacey. We did with Stephanie what we did with Lacey. We laid out all of the details. We brainstormed out the details that really helped us go, okay, where was she before, what was the aha moment, and then the who is she becoming or the after that we seek to relate to our audience. And here's an example of what Stephanie's business or product staple story is going to look like. You're going to notice she has a hook, she has a call to action, she has descriptive details that are incredibly relatable. She's included a before, an aha, that turning point moment that wasn't necessarily that crystal clear because there was still a little bit of a plot twist in there as well. And then you'll notice she has the where she is now, which is all about what her ideal client is looking for. And she knows that going into sharing the staple story. And finally, she put another call to action at the end of her post. Well done, Stephanie. So I want you to be thinking, all right, business staple story, product staple story. I create the details, I draw out the story, and then I connect to my audience. Finally, I want to do one more staple story. Now, this may not apply to you. So if it does not apply to you, you can just push stop and give yourself a pat on the back, go write your business and your product staple story right now. Get to work. However, if you are in the direct sales industry and you had a little bit of a plot twist, maybe you decided to change the organization that you are a part of, or things just didn't work out the way that you wanted to, and you're ready to start fresh. You're ready to start over. I call this the pivot staple story. Now, this is a newer strategy that I am testing out. So at full disclosure, I want to give you a couple of thoughts. Number one, you keep it classy. I always tell my clients who make any changes in direct sales that you always want to take the high road. You want to be seen as a leader in the industry who is looking out in the best interests of the people that she wants to bring into her organization. Perhaps you and the product that you used to be with, they just didn't get along or it just didn't work for you. Those things happen too. But I always encourage you to take the high road. Think about all of the lessons that you learned from your previous experience. Think about everything that you were able to build up from your previous experience or the lessons that you learned. It might even be the marketing that you were able to do or the following that you built. So much good came from it. You will never build a successful direct sales business in another organization by bad mouthing the other organization on the way out. I know I don't need to tell our collective members this because you guys are top dogs and that is not your style. And we keep it classy here at Direct Sales Done Right. However, I want to give you an example of what this might look like where you want to call attention, especially if you were a leader in the industry and you built a business. You want to ask yourself, what type of person do I want to bring into my new organization? Has your niche changed at all? Have your priorities shifted at all? I'd encourage you to go back to the Direct Sales Done Right Academy or even that Niche Down Level Up workbook. Those are really great resources for you. Even though you may have experience in direct sales, it's really great to refresh your mind on those things. So let's dive into a pivot staple story. I want to introduce you to Katie. Now, Katie had a lot of experience. We're talking over 20 years of experience in multiple direct sales businesses. And when I met with Katie, one of the things that I learned is she was a leader in the organization that she was a part of. And she had a lot of blessings come from that and also a lot of lessons learned too. And so as we got into a conversation, we started to talk about what do we want this to look like? What do we want this to feel like? So I'd love for you to take a minute to listen to Katie and I talk about her pivot staple story.
Well, hey everyone, it is Katie, and I'm actually here with Katie, a collective member who is going to walk us through her staple story. Now, Katie made a pivot in direct sales, and what I love about Katie is she is classy, and the way that I see this is an opportunity for us to learn if we too have made a decision to switch our direction in direct sales, and it does happen. And so Katie's staple story is going to be a really great outline for anyone who is in that position where you're thinking about making shifts, or you maybe just made a shift in your direct sales business or company. We're going to walk through that today. So Katie, thank you so much for volunteering your time and your heart to teach the rest of the collective. Are you ready to dive in?
Thank you so much for asking and inviting me. I'm excited to be here, and I hope that this can help somebody.
I absolutely will. And even before we were recording, Katie and I spent some time just walking through how to handle making an adjustment to direct sales. And I said, the one thing that we want to make sure that we're doing is we are being very classy about the way that we approach it in a very honest perspective, but also very aligned to where we're going without so much emphasis on anything that would cause people to be angry or frustrated if they saw in the before. So today what we're going to do is we're going to walk Katie through the before, the aha, and then the where she is now. And I'm going to take all of those details and showcase how we can actually share this as a staple story. So Katie, I would love for you to dive in and tell us a little bit about where you were before you made your recent pivot.
Oh my goodness. So I was with a company, and it would have been, I would have hit my 6-year mark coming up here just this past month. But I built most of my business, all of my business, 99.9% all online. And why I did that is because I have 3 kiddos. I have 3 boys at home. We had just moved down to our new neighborhood about a year and a half. It's been a year and a half now. And for me, as a former dental hygienist, one of the things that I wanted was something online, because I have been in this space for well over 2 decades. And one of the struggles that I had faced in the past was the in-person kind of realm of things. And so with me, with the shift, I honestly probably about it was probably about, let me see here, with my last company, I was with them for almost 6 years. And I would say probably about 5 years in, if not 4.5, I started to just see things change and within myself, and things were starting to compound inside with me. And that was a struggle that I just continued to kind of shove aside and think that things were going to be okay. And I'm just going to keep showing up. And I'm a leader. I was one of the top 3 in the company. And that was really important, was to keep on pressing on and putting that leadership hat on and doing the do. And there was just only so much wrestling I could do anymore. And I had to actually face it and deal with it.
Yeah. And I love that you describe it in a way that was like, there was some just internal wrestling, because I know that so often we can look outward and we can say, these are all the reasons why I might not be where I want to be. But what I appreciate about Katie is she does have that direct sales experience, 25 years about. I don't know. It's been a while, right? Like it's a bit,
25, yes,
quite a
it's
lot.
25. Yes, it's been a long time.
And one of
In
the
and out, but overall, like that's crazy.
It's wild. I know when you say it that way, I'm like, whoo, I'm feeling a little old right now too, because I have a lot of experience as well. But one of the things that I really respect about anyone who's making a pivot, and even in Katie's case, and you'll see how I walked through this, is it is more about looking inward and saying, I know that I want to create an environment where people can thrive. And I also know as a leader, if I feel as though I'm not going to be able to move to that next level of my own internal potential, there might be some shifts that I need to make. So I know that with you, Katie, there was probably like an aha moment or a turning point where you were like, no, burn the boats. I'm going to make this shift. I'm sure it was scary. I would love for you to describe what that looked like to us.
It was extremely scary. It was probably one of the hardest decisions I have ever made. Honestly, because you're taking years and years of success that has grown in an organization. We were over 21,000, and it was massive, and almost just saying bye, and it's almost like a baby you have nurtured and grown and poured your heart and soul into this thing, and to just walk away is something that I wrestled with for a really, really long time. And honestly, one of the things that I did, and that I think helped me, was it was probably, I don't know, 8 months prior. I just started not necessarily pulling myself back from my daily activities, but really elevating myself above and kind of overseeing what all was going on, and really taking in decisions and being aware of other things that might have been happening, and just watching behaviors, watching trends, watching habits, watching how people are treated, all of those little things. And part of me was it was eye-opening, because sometimes I feel like we get so into what we're doing that we
Yeah.
forget to look elsewhere.
Yeah.
And as I started to pull myself out and say, I'm getting frustrated. I feel like I'm becoming very reactive. It was almost sometimes a chore to show up, and I wasn't necessarily enjoying things that I had liked. Like before, I mean, I was hyper focused on my business. It drove me every single day. Like I ate it, I slept it, I drank it. Like it was my Kool-Aid all day long. And I mean, you couldn't keep me from my business, to the point where now I was like, what is happening? And I think
Yeah.
part of me was losing that confidence in myself, because once I had hit the top of the company, I'm that type of person that's like, okay, what's next? What's the next challenge? What's going on next? And so that's where I really started to kind of feel like, okay, and I started to dabble in different things, but it always just came back to my business. And I just felt as though things were not like things. I was wrestling inside with things.
Yeah.
I had people turning heads. I had people, I just felt as though I had, I don't know, I had lost a little piece of myself in a sense. I don't know if that makes any sense, but it was like, I almost felt like what was my next step in leadership and trying to help grow my other leaders, but without that, like help, without that momentum coming forward.
Right.
They always say, like, you don't want to drag anybody, right? And so that was kind of where I just felt I had that internal frustration. And when you are outside and you're kind of pulled back a little bit, I could feel every time something happened, it was almost like God saying, here's a little more salt in that wound. Here's a little more salt in that wound. How does that feel? Like, are you going to, how much more? It was almost like I kept getting this message of like, how much more of this can you take?
Yeah.
And I just, and I took it because I think as leaders, we look at what we've built and we're like, there's no way. And I was very comfortable. I will tell you, I very comfortable living and life, and I still do. I love my life. But one of the things that I have always taught is like, if you're comfortable, you're not growing. And so for me, that was a really big standpoint for me, was like, I'm not growing anymore. I'm not growing as a leader. I felt like I was actually sliding backwards.
Yeah.
I wasn't serving people the way I wanted to serve people. My goals, my big goals had kind of just poof. Like it was kind of just like, meh, like they just kind of fell off a little bit. And I thought, what has happened? What is going on? Like something inside me wasn't allowing me to show up. I wasn't able to, I wasn't respecting what I was being called to do. And I was just sitting because I was comfortable. So I was just being complacent out of my own selfishness because I was very comfortable. And so I think for me, that was honestly, and I don't know if anybody on here is faith-based. I am, but for me, that was a really big test of just calling on prayer and saying, show me what you want me to do. Show me where I'm supposed to go. And a couple things came into play. And one day I just said, I need it to come smack in my face, like bring it to me. And he did. And there it was. And I just said, okay. And for me, the minute I made that decision and I wrestled and I talked with my husband, and literally, his ears probably fell off his head by the time I had talked to him at lengths, and it was just, he was so tired of hearing it. But at the same time, it's really important, I feel like, as a marriage, if you're married, to have those conversations, because it's not an easy decision, because most people have already budgeted that financial situation into their life, whether it's $500, whether it's $1,000. When you choose to take that away, or when you choose to make a shift and put that at risk, that's a really big butt pucker moment. And I think honestly, like it's one of those where I was like, what am I doing? Like, am I crazy? But I had to trust the gut. I had to trust where I was being guided. I have to trust that salt that kept being opened into a wound. And I had to trust, like, okay, like this is,
Yeah.
I don't know what's going on. I don't know how it's going to happen, but I'm going, and here we go. And we ripped that Band-Aid off, and honestly, a weight was lifted. It's stress, but a weight of relief in a sense,
Yeah.
because I listened. And it just felt like, wow, why did I not do this
Yeah.
sooner?
Now, when you went to the new company, did you know about the products? Had you used the products? Did you have experience with it? Or was it just on a whim? Was it a post that you saw, a friend that you saw? How did you even get involved with it?
So I think I had heard about it like way back when, because it's like dinosaur age.
Yeah.
And I was like, what? But I actually had a really great friend. We have traveled together. Our families are great friends. And she ended up with a medical condition, and she had been introduced to them, and it had been helping her nerves and everything, for what she needed to deal with. She didn't want to tell me at first because of where I was at and all of those things, and not wanting to sway and that kind of
Like
stuff.
that? Yeah.
But being who I am, I'm a very great detective. And I was able to piece apart a photo of somebody's shirt pieced with another account with the same shirt, who they were, where they were. And I figured it out within a couple of days and was like, this is where you are. And so that's how I found out about it. And I was able to, I was able to talk with the owner and meet with a lot of the corporate team, because for me, one of the biggest things that was really important to me was comp plan, structure, strategy, support, all of the breakage, all of those things as a leader, and how my brain functions were very important to me with moving, because I wanted to know moving forward, I didn't want to do this again. I didn't ever want to be in the position. I didn't want to do it again. So I really did a lot of homework, and I had started to try the products, but before hearing about it, I had never tried about it. And that was the same with my previous company. I wanted the business. I wanted the business aspect of it, because I know what this can do for people. Like, just like you, I'm a success story, and it has changed my family's life. And so I know how this can change people's life. And so for me, it's really important to take it and run with it. And when I can find that right place and I've done my homework, that was for me a no-brainer. And the products have been kind of that like amazing icing on the cake. I've lost 14 pounds. It's been fantastic. But I think that's the piece where I wanted a good home that I knew I could support a team that I felt confident in, and that I knew that they had a place running with. Yeah.
Yeah. So how would you say that your life has been impacted? And I know it's only been a few months, but in what ways has your life been impacted with your shift with your new company?
It has. It's been honestly, it's been I'm definitely not the person that wears I wear my emotions on my sleeve. I'm not one that thinks everything is like rainbows and cupcakes all the time. I'm very much like, I like optimism, but I'm also a realist at the same time. And I'll say it has not been easy. To go from leaving what you know, and the community that you have built is really hard. It's a really hard shift, because you tend to see people's colors come through when they're, when it's like, oh, wait, you're not in this anymore. We're not friends, and you always hope that people, when they say that it's for the community, it's like, come on now, the pay's in there somewhere, and if it was just for community, like, you would hope that relationships would stay. So that was a big shift.
Okay.
Piece of it is adjusting to that. I think also my habits at home were a big shift, because I was very much regimented, and I was prepared to react at any minute to what was happening within the business. And I didn't have that anymore. It was like I didn't have it. So I was just like, well, what am I doing? Like, what am I supposed to do
I
today?
can imagine.
Because
Yeah.
again, they say like you want to schedule. And I honestly believe people that have jobs are fantastic at direct sales because you have a very minimal amount of time to get your job done. And that's how I started. And when I had that minimal amount of time, I was hyper focused on what I was doing as opposed to being stay-at-home mom. I became like this, oh my God, I have all this time, and it was not structured. So again, I felt like I went back to this like unstructured, weird kind of thing. And it was like, okay, get your act together. Let's get focused. So it was, again, it was almost like you'd climb the top and now I had just taken myself back to the bottom of the mountain. And now it's like, okay, here we go. But having the experience and having that stuff has been helpful. And I think too, just, learning new things. It's a different product. So again, the education piece behind that, it's a humbling experience. It's not a bad experience because I think it's good in growth period, but it's humbling, to say the least.
Yeah. And even as a leader, just that part about being humble, it's like you go back to basics. And I think it's really important to note, no matter where you are in the business, whether you've been at it for 20 plus years, 11 years, 10 years, 2 months, 2 weeks, the vital behaviors of just inviting people into the opportunity, working on your healthy pipeline, making sure that you are not just acquiring, but retaining customers. And then and then signing up distributors, none of that changes. And so going back to the basics where you're now talking about a new product, you're now talking about a new company, you're remembering, okay, I have to change the way that I may have been doing things, but the psychology of the sales doesn't change. So you guys, I just want to take a minute to say thank you to Katie for sharing her staple story with us. What we're going to do now is we're going to break down all of these details, and we're going to pinpoint and select certain details that are going to go into her staple story. So stay tuned.
Lots of twists and turns, am I right? So what I loved about meeting with Katie is it gave a perspective of how to really do direct sales done right. And what I also loved about Katie is we put time and attention into focusing on the skill set that she learned with her previous company and how that could work in her favor as she's onboarding new people into the direct sales experience that she is now a part of. We take all of those lessons with us, and we have a choice for how we want to present them to our audience. So what I loved about Katie is we had tons of details for her to work out. Now, Katie's pivot staple story has a clear before. There was definitely some frustrations. We're not going to focus so much on that. But we are going to focus in great detail about the aha moment, that turning point for Katie, because it is powerful. And finally, we're going to talk about who she is becoming. But more importantly, because we're connecting to our audience, we're going to be talking about where Katie is going and what type of person would work really well with Katie in this new organization. So we mapped out a lot of details for Katie, like a ton of details for Katie. You're going to see there was a lot of aha moments, these slow sort of like decisions that she was making in order to make the actual switch. And then we are going to put an emphasis into the where she is now and who she is becoming, because she wants that type of person to come with her on the journey as well. So as you can see, we got down to what Katie's written pivot story looks like. As you can see, just like the other two examples, there's a before, there is an aha moment, and there is a where she is now. Clearly, she has descriptive language. She's inclusive with her audience. She has a strong hook and a call to action. Well done, Katie. Well, I hope that these examples give you some context into how you can create a staple story that is incredibly effective for your audience as well. What I would like for you to do is take some time, and I want you to get out a pen or a pencil, and I want you to map out what your staple story looks like, whether it's a business, a product, or you want to go into the pivot staple story. Make sure you're thinking about inclusive language. Make sure you're descriptive. And I want you to play around with posting it in some way, maybe changing up the details a little bit, but your staple story is meant to be repeated. This is a big foundational principle of how we get people to connect with you, to begin to see themselves in the story of direct sales. You are the guide. You are not the hero. You are the one taking them to the next level of where they want to go by showcasing the problems that you experienced, the desires that you had, and ultimately how you came to the decision to where you are now because of that decision. Let's get writing.